The Microsoft versus FTC case feels like a never-ending thing, and with that, a ton of new information about Microsoft's potential plans, both past, present, and future. This one, very interesting because it includes Microsoft's intent to want to buy Nintendo. We got to talk about this. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I really wanted to take a moment to talk to you about the news information that is coming out about Microsoft. There's been details revealing a new Xbox console that's supposed to come out next year that hasn't been announced. Unfortunately, it was leaked, as well as new information about some of the big studios and competitors that Microsoft had intended at one point, or potentially still has intentions of looking into buying out, and one of those big ones being one of the big three, Nintendo. So this article dropped from IGN, but everybody's talking about it right now. Why? Because it's a pretty hot topic and would have major implications on the gaming industry. So I'm going to start off by just reading through some of these things, and we'll read the, I guess, actual letter that was leaked that detailed their specific plans for Nintendo. So obviously this article is from IGN. Leaked Microsoft email reveals Xbox boss Phil Spencer really wants to buy Nintendo. Now, keep in mind that Microsoft has had their eye on Nintendo for a while. I think there was at one point in time they did try to bring up the idea to Nintendo that they wanted to buy them out, and I think they got laughed out of the room. That became a meme for a long time. I think it still is a meme. So it's very interesting that, you know, Phil Spencer had at one point considered this again. So the article continues on by saying the Microsoft versus FTC, or Federal Trade Commission, trial over the buyout of Activision Blizzard has already revealed Xbox Phil Spencer's past interest in a number of other high-profile acquisitions, including Sega, which Sega said they're never selling, Final Fantasy, Square Enix, which I think if Square Enix was going to go with anybody, I don't know. I think Square Enix is doing potentially I mean, they're not doing great right now. I think they lost a lot of money, not due to Final Fantasy 16, but just in general. I think they've lost a lot of money, but I don't see them being in the position to want to sell either. But if I think that if they were to sell anybody, I would say that they potentially would sell to Sony. I don't know. That's just my thought. They've had a long-standing relationship. So it says, in an email apparently accidentally made public as part of the trial document released online, Spencer talked enthusiastically about buying the home of Mario, saying it would be a career moment. IGN has asked Microsoft to comment. I don't think they're going to comment, but the email sent in August 2020 before Microsoft bought Bethesda owner ZeniMax also reveals Spencer's interest in Steam owner Valve and Warner Brothers network of video game studios, which includes Mortal Kombat, maker NetherRealm, and Batman Arkham developer Rocksteady, among many others. Now listen, guys, I have my thoughts on this. I think I'm going to save my thoughts on, you know, the acquisitions on really just both sides, and potentially like why it just feels kind of messy right now. I'll save all that for the end, but let's just get into the actual meat and bones of it, that being this article. So this article is an email you can see from Phil Spencer, and it states, Takeshi, I totally agree that Nintendo is the prime asset for us in gaming, and today gaming is our most likely path to consumer relevance. I've had numerous conversations with the LT of Nintendo about tight collaboration and feel that if any US company would have a chance with a Nintendo, we are probably in the best position. I don't know about that, but yeah, I would say, you know, okay. The unfortunate or fortunate for Nintendo situation is that Nintendo is sitting on a big pile of cash. They have I don't know what BOD means, but that until recently has not pushed for further increases in market growth or stock appreciation. I say until recently, as our former Microsoft board of directors member, Value Act, has been heavily acquiring shares of Nintendo, and I kept in touch with Mason Morfitt, and he's been as he's been acquiring. It's likely he will be pushing for more from Nintendo stock, which would create opportunities for us. Without that catalyst, I don't see an angle to a near-term mutually agreeable merger with Nintendo and Microsoft, and I don't think a hostile action would be a good move, so we are playing the long game. But our board of directors has seen the full write-up of Nintendo and Valve, and they are fully supportive of either if opportunity arises, as am I. Okay, so I want to stop it there by saying, you know, I know I was going to, you know, I'm going to save the gist of my feelings towards the end, but I've just... And this isn't against Microsoft, you know, this isn't against, you know, their acquisitions as of late, because Sony's definitely been a part of the acquisition game for a while. But it's been a long time. I don't think ever have we seen acquisitions of this scale. You're talking about buying major corners, major pockets of the industry so that you can have more control over gaming, or you can have better releases or things like that. And this is why the Bethesda deal and ZeniMax, with Bethesda and id and Arcane and so many of these other studios that were under the ZeniMax umbrella, this is why it was such a big deal, because it means that a major portion of the of gaming as we know it, via a number of major developers, we're now going to be exclusively, probably more than likely, exclusively making games for Microsoft and Xbox, which a lot of people, their argument has been, well, Sony's been doing the same thing. Now, in my opinion, and this is something that I've, been watching this very closely over the last couple of years, I've never seen Sony go out and buy a major corner of the studio, right? You don't see a lot about Sony being like, hey, let's buy up Activision. You know what I mean? This was a big move by Microsoft. Not only did they buy ZeniMax, but then they went right out and said, hey, we're going to buy Activision. You know how many game developers and studios are under the Activision umbrella? You're talking about like a quarter of the industry. And so, if not more, obviously a quarter is just a mass, a gross exaggeration, but I mean, it could be more, it could be less, but I feel like Activision, you see that little banner pop up with so many games now. And so the fact that Microsoft has ZeniMax and now they're potentially on the cusp of acquiring Activision, it's a big deal. And it's something me as a gamer I never really want to see, because I don't ever want to see a monopoly. It's the same way I feel about Disney. I don't want to, it felt like every time you turned around and you looked on social media, you saw that Disney had bought somebody. Disney bought Marvel. They bought this person. They bought that person. And right, when you have the money to do that, obviously, sure, go ahead and, do what you got to do. But at the same time, nobody wants to see monopoly. It's the same way I feel about sports. Nobody wants to see the Patriots win year after year after year after year. Nobody wants to see the Golden State Warriors win year after year after year. Okay, so before you come at me and say, oh, well, you're just hating on Xbox, Sony does the same thing. No, this is just in general. Even if Sony was doing this, I would be like, oh, that's kind of gross. Like, I don't want to see anybody have too much of the market, because I think competition is good, variety is good, and when you are in a position like Microsoft where they have the capital to do that, and it feels like their main goal is to just buy away stuff from Sony. They say, we just want to take things away from Sony. It's not that they want to produce their own quality content, right? Because Xbox used to be the mainstay. They used to be top of the pack. I feel like Xbox 360 was the best that Xbox and Microsoft have ever been. And I don't know what happened when the Xbox One came out. I don't know what happened. But it feels like they just lost a lot of that steam, and it felt like the games that were coming out exclusively on Xbox weren't that great. It feels like games weren't really coming out on Xbox at all. It felt like they were just taking forever to release, and when they would release unfinished. And so, a lot of this whole thing about Microsoft being in third place and not being on the same level as Nintendo and not being able to produce the same quality content as Sony really isn't either of their faults. Like, you have to look at Microsoft and say, well, Microsoft has the opportunity because they have studios too. Even before Bethesda, before ZeniMax, before their whole push for Activision, they had studios. But for some reason, they just fail on every turn to invest and provide the time frame necessary for their studios to succeed. And that's really what it comes down to. They produce games. Games do come out on Xbox, but they just don't seem to be that great. And then they push a lot of their games on Game Pass. And like, Game Pass is good for gamers. There's a whole different discussion I'll talk about with Game Pass at some point. I'm not necessarily a fan of it. It just doesn't have a lot of value to me because I just don't have the time. Like, maybe when I was like in middle school or whatever. If you're in middle school, you're in high school, whatever, like, Xbox Game Pass is probably like the peak moment for gaming for you, because you pay $12 a month and you can play whatever game you want, hundreds of thousands of games, and that's great. But for me, I just don't have that kind of time to like have an entire library of games at my disposal. Like, I play, some of the same games, and, occasionally we'll throw in a new game every once in a while, but I just don't have that kind of time. Anyway, my point is, you never want to see a monopoly. And so even the conversation being had that like they were looking to buy Nintendo is scary. It's scary for the industry, because I feel like nobody, not Microsoft, not Disney, nobody should have that kind of power and that kind of influence to manipulate the market in such a way, because they have so much of it. You know what I mean? And so that's obviously that's my thing. The article continues on by saying, confidentially, we have two very or fairly active M&A discussions in gaming right now. Warner Brothers Interactive and ZeniMax. I took ZeniMax to the board of directors last week, and prior to the board of directors discussion, I asked Amy and Satya if they wanted me to slow either or both of these given the TikTok discussions, and they have emphatically told me no. They are fine doing all three of these if the deals make sense. I won't say Warner Brothers and ZeniMax is Nintendo, but both are for sale and gettable by us if things align. Biggest obstacle in Warner Brothers is IP ownership. We wouldn't own any of the IP, which hurts long-term flexibility, and the only obstacle on ZeniMax is valuation expectations of founders. But I think it's likely one or both of these happen, which will help us continue to double down on our gaming relevance. To give a sense of scale, ZeniMax is about the size of our current first-party studios org. So that would be doubling our content asset. Downside is it's more core, less broad, not mobile, more North America, Europe, etc. I love this discussion and value you looking at the opportunities here at some point. Getting Nintendo would be a career moment. I honestly believe a good move for both companies. It's just taking a long time for Nintendo to see that their future exists off their own hardware, a long time. And I mean, that's really the end of the article. Now, this has obviously been a big point of discussion over the last, whenever this article dropped, the last 24 hours or so. Nintendo's a big player. Nintendo is a huge player. They obviously have no reason to sell. They got theme parks. They got movies now with the Super Mario Brothers movie, and there's been discussions that they potentially would be looking into making an animated Zelda movie, which I think would do really well. They obviously have games, and many of the games Nintendo doesn't. I don't feel like Nintendo pumps out like brand new games, AAA first-party games like that, but when they do, they bring out a Tears of the Kingdom, they bring out a new Mario game or whatever. They sell, and they sell really well. I don't see in any world Nintendo having or feeling the pressure or feeling, whatever to sell to Microsoft. And again, as I said before, this isn't an anti-Microsoft video. This is just to say that Microsoft is obviously the point of conversation of this video because Microsoft is doing a lot of it. They're trying to buy big pockets of the industry, which I gotta say has had me a little annoyed because I support Microsoft. I want Microsoft to succeed, but I feel like over the last 10 years or so, ever since the Xbox 360, I feel like Xbox has stopped being able to provide good first-party experiences on their own. And so now they're at the point where they say, we have the money to do it. Let's just go buy everybody and buy everybody that's making good games, and we'll just keep buying up people because we have the money to do it, and that will help us. But at the end of the day, Microsoft has to have good leadership, and they have to have good vision for these games. And I feel like instead of just buying up everybody and hoping that they'll make Xbox a bigger player in the gaming space, that instead they actually just focus on the big core studios that they have and have them produce good games. Again, it's not to say that Sony has not done the same thing in the past. I think Xbox is obviously doing it on a much grander scale, but obviously for the longest time, both sides of the coin have been buying up developers. If a developer does really well in a game, or they see value and profit in investing in a developer, then they're going to do that, obviously. And that, I feel like that's always been fair. Yeah, that's always been fair. But I think when, like I said before, when you're buying up big corners of the industry in hopes that that's going to make you a better contender, I don't think that's going to help Xbox. I think Xbox can buy Activision, and yeah, they'll have Call of Duty, and they'll have a bunch of other games, through ZeniMax and stuff like that. But I don't think that unless they find a way to actually make consistently good games, that Xbox is ever going to be anything more than third place. That's just because the trend that we've seen is that Xbox just feels incapable of producing good games. So they can buy all the studios they want. I don't necessarily know if that's going to help them. But if you want to play the comparison game and you look at Sony, look what games Sony has come out with, first-party titles that have done really well and been incredible experiences. You talk about The Last of Us Part 1 remake. You talk about God of War Ragnarok, right? You talk about the Uncharted series. You talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, you talk about the Spider-Man series. Like, I think people like to hate on Sony a lot, but I feel like people hate on Sony a lot because Sony's doing well. Sony is doing what Xbox should be doing, what Xbox used to do. I feel like in the Xbox 360 days, Xbox was putting out good games. And somewhere along the line, I feel like they just lost their way. They started to invest in Game Pass, which I felt like, yeah, a lot of people were defending it. A lot of people were saying it's not good for the industry. I would agree. I don't think Game Pass is good for the industry. I think when you spend years and hundreds of thousands of dollars making a game, you don't want to put it on a site for $10 a month. And yeah, I think in the long term, years down the road, maybe that game becomes profitable. But I feel like if you put a lot of work and money and time into a game, I feel like you want to get direct monetary compensation for that, which is why, you know, when you used to make a game, that game would drop for $70, $60, whatever. And you would be able to assess how well that game is doing, if it's meeting your market, your margins, and what your expectations were for that game based on how many copies it sold. Now with streaming and Xbox wanting to jump into their own form of streaming with Xbox Game Pass, I feel like that's muddying the waters a little bit, and it's making it difficult for developers to know how well their game is doing. To say that like this many people are playing on Game Pass, well, obviously everybody's, you know, all these people got Game Pass, so of course they're gonna be playing the game, but that doesn't equate to success and financial, you know, opportunity. I think it's crazy when brand new games come out in Game Pass. I think that's, I don't know how that's working. I don't know if that can work for the long term without them continually having to increase prices of Game Pass, but either way, that's neither here nor there. The point is, you never want to see studios or big pockets of the gaming space be brought up. And so, you know, I don't know. I feel like this is absolutely crazy. I don't think Nintendo should ever sell to anybody. Even if Sony was like, hey, we're looking to buy Nintendo. I think Nintendo is doing well on their own, and I liked there being a big three. I don't want there to be like these two massive giants joined forces to try to take down Sony or whatever. I feel like that's weird. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this whole situation? Is this something that would you want to see this? Is this something that makes sense? Me personally, I don't think they'll ever sell. I think Nintendo is in such a strong position. They're good. They don't need to sell to another company. And I feel like even if they only ever did games and theme parks and things like that, I feel like Nintendo would be doing just fine. I don't think they need, you know, they got movies now that they're looking into. I really don't think Microsoft has anything to offer Sony or Nintendo that Nintendo couldn't already do themselves. But that's just me. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this? Is this something that is possible for you? Drop a like on this video if you do enjoy. Subscribe if you're new here, all that good YouTube stuff. And as always, my name is That Guy Rye, and I will see you in the next video.